So we're going to continue Halacha Niddah Siman Kuf Tzadik Ches, talking about chatzitzas. Many of these chatzitzas, many of the examples brought down here in Halacha, one can see them in the Mishnayos, in Mikvaot. Some of them are from the Tosefta, others are mentioned in the Gemara. Many of them, perhaps, we may not come across too often. Nonetheless, we need to know that they make a big difference, whether the tvila will be a good tvila or not. So the woman, the mikvah lady, they have to be aware just about all of them, even though some of them are not so common. We're holding in Seif Yud Aleph. Seif Yud Aleph is an interesting situation where somebody has something stuck in his body. It could be a thorn, a splinter, which is actually very possible. That does happen. The other one, a chetz, an arrow, a piece of metal, a sharp object, I don't think that would be too common. Nonetheless, the halacha is very similar as to what does this constitute. Is this a chatzitza or not? I mean, it's stuck there. Should we remove it or not? It may not be so simple. So before we get inside the halacha, it's important to keep in mind that the pasuk that says "Verochatz besaro b'mayim," the one needs to immerse himself in the water, his basar, his flesh, it does not mean that the water has to go deep underneath the skin. It means the surface of the skin has to come in contact with water. This is an important concept because we will be talking about, I don't know if we'll get to all of it today, but maybe next week, to a concept called Basar and to that which is balua. Now, when I say balua, you might be thinking of Taaruvot, Basar b'chalav. Balua, all it means is something that is, in this case of Halacha Niddah, something which is deep inside the body, concealed. We're not talking about an absorption of any sorts. And whereas Basar is that which is hidden, but it's not balua. A typical example of Basar would be the vagina area. Okay, so that is somewhat concealed. It's hidden. It's called Basar, Seiser, right? It's concealed. But water can reach there. Technically, whether it ends up going or not is another issue. But it can. There's access to it. It's an opening. It's a crevice where water can penetrate. The nose and the ears are also crevices, I guess you can call them, or parts of the body which the deeper areas of them are pretty much concealed. And this poses a question in halacha of what happens if something is inside of them. Is that a chatzitza? Does water really have to go in there? Does water have to go inside the body? Well, not really. Based on what we just said, it doesn't have to go all the way inside. But that which is exposed, it has to be that the water can reach it. And even though she closes her eyes when she immerses her in the mikveh and the water is not going into the eyes, it doesn't have to go into the eyes as long as it is possible for it to go to the eyes. So we had a question about contact lenses. So, I mean, obviously contact lenses should be removed. Any foreign object should be removed. We're machmir, even if they're loose, even if water can technically get in between. But still, the question is, how far does the water need to go? So right now all we know is from this pasuk we understand that it doesn't have to go deep inside underneath the skin. It suffices if it covers the surface of the body. Every part of the surface of the body comes in contact with water, and that's fine. If that's the case, then how do we deal with a thorn? Thorn that went into her body, into her finger, or whatever it may be. So there's a machlekes in the Tosefta, and there's another machlekes amongst the Rishonim as to what does it mean, what the Tosefta says, what does it mean if there's a thorn? Does it mean that the thorn is visible, it's stuck inside but it's visible, or it's totally not visible? Will that make a difference? So that's one of the areas that is discussed in the Tosefta. Rishonim talk about it. What exactly is meant by a thorn inside her finger or some other part of her body? As to whether if it's visible or not, will it make a difference? And what if the skin covers it? Will that make a difference? Plus, there's another chiluk if this object is made of metal or made of wood. As far as the difference between the material of the object, we don't see the Mechaber making any mention of it. So obviously, la halacha l'maisa, it's not going to make a difference. The main important chiluk will therefore be if this object is visible or not. But we still have to figure out what does visible mean. Does visible mean sticking out? Part of it is sticking out and I can see it, or visible means that it's inside all the way but it's flush with the skin and I can see the head of it. So that's one of the questions that the Rishonim deal with.
So we've decided by now that it has to be visible, yeah?
No. That's one of the chiluk.
And whether or not it's visible, if so, what it means.
Right. So it's really, there's two chilukim, and we need to determine what visible means. But we do know so far,
for argument's sake,
yes,
that something to be visible would have to be protruding.
Right.
Then would it mean that something that is not protruding would be in the category of not being visible?
Correct.
So then we have two categories.
Yes.
Visible and not visible. The question is just what particular case will it belong in one or the other?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Now, as far as the metals, if it's wood, apparently the wood doesn't let the water in as well as if it would be metal. Why? And why is that? Because, as they explain, one pshat in Rashi, I think, was that the metal doesn't connect well with the skin. The skin won't grow around it as well as it will around wood. That's one pshat. And because of that, wood would be more of a problem than metal would. A second pshat would be that with a metal there's sometimes the danger of removing it, much more than if it's wood. And since it's dangerous to remove, one may just leave it behind and not be makbid on it if it's there. Since you're not makbid, it's not choitzes. Right? You know about metal, right? In the body could present a problem sometimes by removing it. Sometimes they leave the bullet inside it, but for other reasons. They don't want to dig too much. It could be dangerous. It could do more harm than good. If it's there and it doesn't present a problem with the poisoning, the lead poisoning, then they just leave it there. But there could be other reasons of why it may just be better to leave it. In any event, that's just another explanation as to why it may be left there, and if it's left there, that means she's not going to be makbid on it, and it therefore will not be choitzitz with metal, as opposed to the wood. But this chiluk is not brought down le'alach. I just wanted you to know about it. There is such a chiluk mentioned as to what kind of a thorn or what kind of an object are we talking about that's stuck inside the body.
What do you mean by it's not brought down?
Halacha, the Mechaber doesn't talk about it because obviously he goes with the opinion, or Pashup Pshat, he's simply quoting the Mishnah, where there's no differentiation.
So
in the Makor, later on they differentiate. What exactly was meant over here? Does it make a difference? In the Tosefta, yeah. All right, but the Rishonim take it one step further in considering what is visible. So that's another chiluk, whether visible means protruding, like you said, or does it also mean it's flush with the basar, but it's visible, I can still see it, as opposed to something that is completely covered up, or something that is completely hidden that it cannot be seen. Covered up completely with the skin and it's just inside, everybody agrees that it's not choitzitz. The machlok,
even if you see it.
Even if you can see it, I mean that there's something there, but it's completely covered up with skin. The Mechaber is only going to bring us here the chiluk, or whether it is protruding outside or not, and even then we don't know from this Mechaber how did he paskin, whether does he mean that even if it's flush or not. For that you have to go to the Basar, you have to go to the Shach and see the various opinions as to what is meant by visible or not. But everybody seems to agree that if it's covered up completely with skin, the skin grew over it, it's just there's a piece inside, it doesn't present a problem. And why? Because of what we said before. It's enough that a person dips into the water and the surface of his body, all the surface of the body comes in contact with water, not inside of his body. So anything that's inside would not pose a problem over here. So the question here was the visibility of it. That's all. That's the only question. What constitutes visible? There is an opinion that according to the Rabbanon, there were goyzer, even if it's shakua, even if it's inside but it's visible, there were goyzer otu she'ino meshuka, or otu she'ino shakua. In other words, perhaps they were machmir, according to one interpretation of what is visible, that even if it's flush, we're goyzer, in other words, the Rabbanon, that it should also be asur, so we shouldn't come to make the mistake when it's not shakua, when it's actually protruding, that it's a problem. So therefore there were goyzer, shakua otu she'ino shakua. Whereas according to the other opinion, which is Rabbi, he was not goyzer. So that's one way of understanding the machlokes Rabbanon and Rabbi. So as we said, the Mechaber was not mechalik, just quoted the lashon of the Mishnah as follows: Chetz or koitz hatocho bebasar. If you have this object, chetz like an arrow, or a thorn, or a splinter that is stuck into the basar, in Niddah b'chutz, if it could be visible from the outside, choitzes. V'imeno Niddah eno choitzes, but if it cannot be seen, it's not choitzes. Neither does he mention if it's all covered by a skin, because that's pashut. If it's not visible, it's not choitzes, then you don't have to say if it's covered by a skin. So that additional detail, which is also brought down, is not mentioned here in the Mechaber, but it's understood that the main difference will be, the main chiluk will be if the thorn or this chetz is visible or not. And the question is, do you need to be machmir, of course, if it's flush? In other words, according to the interpretation that visible means even if it's flush, it does present sometimes a problem. Where could it present a problem, or where can it present a shayla? An interesting shayla that Shi'urei Shevet HaLevi brings down concerning stitches. When would a person have stitches? It could be either after an operation, it could be after birth, or dental work. Right? There are stitches. Now, sometimes stitches will just melt away and disappear on their own, and sometimes they have to be removed by the doctor. Stitches that need to be down the road, need to be removed by the doctor, are choitzes. And they would be choitzes in the same way that a chetz or koitz, hatocho bebasar, is choitzes, if it's niddah, right? I mean, the stitches are pretty much visible, so they would be similar to this halacha of that which is visible, stuck into the flesh, is choitzes. The doctor is eventually going to remove them. But I think he asks the question, well, what would be the case if you cut it flush with the gums, for example, the teeth? You cut it fierce, the stitches. You don't let them protrude, you don't let them stick out. There's nothing that you can see. It's pretty much flush. What would be the din? So I think he leaves it in the tzorech iyun. That would be an interesting question if that is possible. But I think it was Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that said, when he was asked about this question, that if the stitches are going to just melt away, they're going to go away on their own, that they're not choitzes. Why? Because they're bottled to the guf. That's what Rav Auerbach says. I think Rav Wosner said that it all really depends if it bothers her, because if it bothers her so much that she's makpid on them, then it makes no difference that they eventually fall apart on their own. Ultimately, it reverts to, does she care? Does she mind? Does it bother her? Same thing with Rabbi Elyahu. In the case of stitches, he was machmir. Even if they melt away, even if they go away on their own. But Rav Wosner at least was mechalik, if she's makpid or not, does it really bother her? Well, that's an individual thing. It could be sometimes they're not even felt, the stitches, depending how many stitches they are, depending on what exactly was done to her. So it would depend, according to Rav Wosner, if she's makpid or not, does it bother her? In the next halacha, or halachas, we're going to see all kinds of lichluchim, all kinds of dirt, colors, paint, dyes, makeup, and a whole list that is taken from the Mishnah. In Mishnah Mikvaot, you can see quite a few items that are either choitzes or not. So in Halacha Yud Beis, we have like this: Lichluchei tzoyer she'ala bosa machmas zeya einam choitzesim niglad keglid choitzes. So here we're talking about all kinds of particles that accumulate as a result of sweat. Particles of dirt. And you probably know what I'm talking about, that you may have seen it. Sometimes on the skin there's all kinds of particles and dirt that accumulate as a result of sweat. So these on their own are not choitzets. That's if they're still soft, they're still moist. Why? Because water gets through them. Since water can get through them, even though it's dirt, it's not choitzes. But niglat keglid choitzes, once it becomes hardened, like a glid, in other words, I guess dirt which is hardened, which is more solid, then it's choitzes. Now this is very interesting, because in learning the other halachas we will see that it's not so pashut, especially when we talk about nails. The nails of a woman is a whole area in itself that requires a whole discussion. Long nails, dirt under the nails. She's going to cut them, she's not going to cut them, she wants them, is it for beauty purposes? And maybe we'll get to some of it soon. But over there, we will see that there is, for some reason, more of a chumrah on dirt that has accumulated underneath the nails. Depends where in the nail. Depends what kind of dirt it is. If it's regular dirt, or if it's botzek, dough, she was eating challah. For some reason, by the nails, we'll see it's much more serious. And here, it's on her basar, it's lichluchei tzoya, and it's not such a big deal.
Which means that if she was, as soon as she takes the shower, before, it should then become soft and not be an issue anymore. Whatever she has on.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. We're talking about something that is really pretty soft. And therefore...
If it was hard on her.
No, that's what I'm about to say.
When she takes the shower, it should soften.
Well, obviously, that's the whole idea of the chafifa and the hachonas that she has to do, is to make sure that those things are gone. But what's the difference between something that's there, that is dirt, and if it's soft or if it's hard? It's not only because that which is soft will fall off anyway, as we've seen this idea before, but it's also because she's not makbid so much on it. Something which is lichluch of zeya, from the sweat, that is really soft, it's not hard, not going to remain there really, it's not that she has to really work hard to remove it, she's not makbid. So unless it became hard, then it poses a problem. And as we've seen before, there are other situations where something hardens, like dam, right, dam yovesh, because we will see another situation about dam that is not choitzes. All kinds of situations where something is hard, it is choitzes. How about milmulin? Milmulin she'ala basar choitzetzim. Milmulin is already something different. So what's milmulin? Milmulin are particles of dirt that have accumulated on one's hand, for example, as a result of him handling mud, clay, or dough. So these are particles, these are harder particles. This is not just soya coming from sweat, a little dirty, that there's some substance there, but it's not substantial enough. It will fall away easily. Milmulin shala basar, but either on the hands or any other part of the body that has accumulated there, but it's already harder. On that, we do say it's choitzes. What about mud? Let's see if you dial it. There's all kinds of mud. If you learn the Mishnayos, if you learn Mikvaot, you will see that the different consistency, they have different names. So here the Mechaber just brings down tit hayoven, v'tit hayotzrim, v'tit derachim, hanimtza sham tamid. 3 kinds of tit, 3 kinds of mud, which is basically a mud of sorts that is either very, very thick in consistency, that's tit hayoven, or tit hayotzrim, which is a little bit more malleable, softer because they use it for making all kinds of objects that they need to make it with. And then you have tit derachim, hanimtza sham tamid, that mud that is found on the road, that is always there. Afilu bi'imot hachama, that's there even during the summer. These are all different kinds of consistencies. These are all pretty hard. They're not very liquidy. Kol elu chotzetzin, all of these will be a chatzitza. Ushar kol atit, any other tit that is not mentioned here, depends. Keshulach, when it's soft, liquidy, ein a chotzetz. It's not a chatzitza. Sharehu nimche b'mayim, and here he explains to us why. What difference will it make? Well, the consistency makes a difference because if it's very soft, it will eventually just fall off with the water. As if it's a man or a woman, as she's going down, even though she should have cleansed herself, she should have washed herself, and we're obviously assuming that she did that. But even in the event she did not, if it's that type of a tit, it's nimche b'mayim. Ukshu yavesh, but if it's dry, chotzetz. So here again we see the concept of anything which is dry is going to be chotzetz. Well, then we have another little detail over here that if she's makped, afilu bedavar lach chotzetz, even if it were to be soft, it's chotzetz. So here we see that it somewhat would depend on her too in this particular example. Now, this situation that we have here regarding tit, the halachas of what is choitzes and what is not choitzes, can also be applied to the next seif. In other words, even if it's soft, but she's makpid, it will be choitzes. So seif tezvav says, hadyo, hachalav, vehadvash, vehadam. You have ink, you have milk, you have honey. So the dio, the chalav, the dvash, the honey, the dam, the blood. Sraf ha-te'ena. Sraf is the sap, the resin, the gum, that which comes out of certain trees. So in this case, the resin or the sap that's coming from the fig tree. Sraf ha-tut, that's coming from the berry. Sraf ha-charuv, that sap that's coming from the carob. Sraf ha-shikma, the sap that's coming from another tree. Some say it's a kind of a fig. All of these saps, they used to collect sap, so it can get on your hands, on your body. If yeveshim, if they're dry, chotzetzim, there would be a chatzitza. Lachim, if they're soft, einam chotzetzim.
You can wash them often, no?
Yeah, well, obviously, you should wash them off.
I wanted to know if there's any particular sphere of size.
Yes, we're going to talk about soon that if it's a very small miut, at times when we're dealing with something that could be a chatzitza, but if it's so little that people then are not makpid on it, then it would be okay. So I think we'll get to that soon. So here, again, all kinds of materials that could get on the body, that if they're dry, they're choitzim, if they're lachim, soft, they're einam choitzim. Ushar kol asrafim afilu lachim choitzim. All the other saps, even if they're soft, they are choitzim. So we have here, I guess, a tradition of those items that are problematic, either because people are makpid on them, or they're there's a big difference between whether they're hard or not, versus others that even if they're lachim, people, don't want to have it on them for whatever reason, and therefore they will be choitzes. So only these ones mentioned here in this seif would make a difference if they're dry versus lachim when they're still soft.
Are the examples given?
Yeah.
Are they because people used to collect those particular saps?
Yeah.
Utilize them? Or is it only those not as examples, but those are the only ones. For instance, maple trees, where people in Vermont and places like that collect the sap.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Would a maple tree fit this category, or do we say since it's not listed, the maple tree doesn't count?
Well, no. On the contrary, because it's not listed, not that it doesn't count. We would have to be choishesh that it is choitzitz, even if it's still.
Even though it's the kind of thing they collect.
Okay.
That's my.
No. So if you're asking, I think I know what you're asking. You're asking about an individual whose occupation
Something like that.
is all day with that. That could be easier, because as we'll soon see with paint, people who are painting the whole day, they may not be as makpid on if some paint gets on their hand. A shoichet who has blood on his hands may not be makpid. So that we will soon see. That already depends on whether he does that all the time. That's his profession. He's strict. Or he's demanding, or he's exacting. So here we just have a couple names of those that make a difference whether they're yavish or not. Now, legabe, the teat that is lach, that we said before, and I think you could say the same about other saps listed in Mishnah Tezvav. The fact that it's lach, what does that mean? So what if it's lach? Just because it's lach, it's not choitzes? So the Rambam, I think, explains that which is lach simply will fall off when he enters the water. That is the reason of why it's not choitzes. The first type of tit that we mentioned in Yudaled, for example, tita yoven, where there's no chiluk between yovesh and lach, the reason why they are always a chatzitza is because they very much stick to the body. People are makpid on them. They don't fall off so easily. So that's really the difference between that which is thick or dry, I should say, and that which is lach. The lach, according to the Rambam, simply means that it will fall off easily, and therefore it's not choitzes. However, the Chazon Ish writes about this, that in these kinds of situations where there's something that will easily fall off into the water, in case she did not clean herself and it's on her, she has to wait in the water until it comes off. She just can't dip and come right out. Because if it doesn't come off, it's choitzes. The whole idea is that if it's lach, it should fall off. Then if it's not falling off, then she should wait there or remove it.
What's the point?
Take a shower.
So then it means by the lach also it's required that it should be absent. The only difference between the lach and the not lach is that the lach, it's easier to get rid of it. And as like just going into the mikvah might be sufficient to do so. But so there's no kula there. Because ultimately, you have to remove either one of them. Only the means of removing it is easier done by something that's fluff.
Well, yeah.
I thought that we were talking about the categories that...
No, the Chazon Ish just elaborates a little bit more and says that, yes, it's supposed to come off, but if it did not, she has to stay in the water longer until it falls off. That's all he says.
So you have to get rid of either of the two of them, only that by the lach one, there's a possibility it might come off if you go to the mikvah with it.
That's what the Chazon Ish says.
So there's really not two categories.
Yes. The Rambam just says that this category means that it automatically, most likely, just falls off, comes off.
The question is, can you disregard it?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
So apparently, according to the Chazon Ish, you can't disregard it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's another opinion, that's the opinion of the Yereim. That it's not so much of whether it comes off or not with the water, it's whether people are makpid on it or not. Regular tit, for example, if it's lach, people are not makpid.
Which would not require that it come off in the mikvah.
Right. Exactly. So according to this, she wouldn't have to wait in the water any longer. Yeah.
Now, makpid would be a per individual thing, or it has to be...
No, the people, people are not makpid.
So in general?
In general, yeah. But as we saw over here, that if it's lach, but he makpedet, then it's not. Then it's choitzitz.
In other words, the individual can upset
in the case of a lach.
The kula.
Yeah.
But the individual cannot establish the kula.
Right. And as we said, the halachas of the tit pretty much apply, the same logic applies to the halachas of the various other items here listed in Sif Tes Vov, the saps and the like. Before we go into the next Sif, perhaps maybe I should just mention another very important and relevant halacha that is brought down by the poskim, including the Chazon Ish and others, where sometimes a woman needs to insert in her ear a moch, a cotton, with oil or without oil, medication. And it could be for one or two reasons. One is it's medicated. She needs that inserted in her ear. Or she needs the cotton there to prevent the water from entering into her ear, her inner ear. Regardless, she's going to have a moch, a piece of cotton inside. So whether it's for refuah or not, the example of refuah is something that the Chazon Ish discusses. The example of not a refuah, but in order for it to prevent any water from going in, is brought down by the Shevet HaLevi. This kind of situations pose a problem of whether they are chatzitza or not. But if we say that part of the ear is balua, it's called already inside the body, then it's not a problem. The water doesn't really have to enter over there. On the other hand, even if you don't hold that it's balua, but it's has the same status as Basar storim, that which is hidden, it could still be okay. Why? Because even in Basar storim, you don't really need water to go inside. All you needed is for water to be able to penetrate inside. And through the cotton and through the oil, the water can get through. So the various angles of how to look at it.
But if it can get through, then how is the cotton going to help prevent the water from getting inside in the case where that's the purpose of it?
She won't stay long enough.
So that's again one of these things where the possibility is sufficient and it doesn't have to be realized. So then the
exactly.
should have
right. So it all exactly. Right. So it all depends how you look at it. But if you're Metzaref the Rambam sheet over here, that it's eventually going to get through because it's lach. It's soft. The oil is soft, or even the cotton is soft. In other words, whatever is there is not going to block. And according to him, that is the explanation of why it's not choitzit when something is lach, as opposed to the other explanation of the Yereim, right? So if you're mitzarev that opinion or that explanation that something which is soft anyway, it will get through. It will. In this case, it won't fall off, but it will get through. It will penetrate. Then it should be okay. I gave you this example because this actually can happen. Whether she needs it for medical reasons or whether she wants it there because she doesn't want the water to get in there. In that case, it will help her somewhat, even though it's soft, and it may get through if she's under the water long enough. It all depends how you treat that spot. In reality, I saw several poskim who hold that inside the ear is called Mokum Balua. It's not called Basar storim. So if it's Balua, the water doesn't have to go all the way inside that spot, that area. Once you hold that it's a Balua, in other words, once you hold that place is called Balua, then it's not a problem at all. I mean, you don't have to, she doesn't have to clean inside her nostrils, all the way deep inside, right? I mean, maybe there's something stuck inside. We don't make her clean all the way, just on the surface, whatever she can see, whatever is visible, pretty much. That, yes, but deeper is called balua. And we said already that which is balua, the water doesn't have to come to. So, regardless of her reason of why she wants to put the moch inside, if it's deep inside, there's definitely a reason to be mekel. Sifta Zayin, dam shenisach bebasar afilu lach choitzitz. Blood that is already nisrach on the flesh, it's already becoming viscous, it's drying up. It's no longer just liquid. Afilu lach, even though it's still a little bit lach, choitzitz, okay?
That's when it's congealing?
Yeah, it's on the surface of the skin, right? And it's congealing. It's drying up, but it's not dry completely. That we already had before. Dam yovish. Here we have dam shenisach b'basar. In other words, the reason it's called nisach is because if you touch it, put your finger on it, it makes like a line. It flows a little bit. It's not completely liquidy, but it's beginning to become dry. So that we're learning the Gemara there. It's brought down in Maseches Menachos that it's choitzes. So even though it's still lach, it presents a problem. So that just comes to show you that how much a woman needs to check herself for all kinds of situations. If she had a bruise, she was working with something, she got her hands dirty in the area of her hair, all kinds of issues that can complicate the tevilah. But now we come to the other situation where, in this case a woman, but a lot of these halachas would apply to a man too. What about colors, paint, dyes, used by the women to color their face, their hands, or their hair on the head? What about them? Is that a problem? Color. So Mechaber says Eino choitzes. It's not choitzes. Why not? Because why should it? All of this is color. Color doesn't really exactly. And
it's a substance. It should be.
What?
If it's a substance.
But that's the question. The question is, does it need to be a substance?
I mean, you can peel it off.
Well, the Rashi brings two explanations as to why it's not choitzes. One, women are not makbid to remove it. On the contrary, they want it there.
Depends on the color.
Well, maybe they're disappointed. You mean they didn't get any compliments on it? Maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But you have to know what the source of the color is and how it got there.
Right. No, we're talking about here colors that she intentionally puts on herself.
Makeup.
Like makeup.
Bleaching your hair or dyeing your hair.
Dyeing the hair, all kinds of things that she puts on either her hands, her face, her hair. Right. So that includes makeup. So the Rashba says one explanation why it's not choitzet is because they're not makbid to remove it. On the contrary, they want it there. And the second explanation is chazusa lav milsa. Chazusa means appearance. Something that has no substance, it just has an appearance. A color. Lav milsa. It doesn't add up to anything. It's nothing. It's not something that's there that you can feel.
It's not substantial.
It's not substantial, yeah. So that's the two explanations given as to why color, in this case, is not choitzet. So, what would be then the din with color that is put on other parts of the body that is not for beauty purposes?
The famous, what is it they put on the hand?
Henna, all these things, yeah, all kinds of things. It's not for beauty purposes.
It's a lucky charm or something?
But it could be that it just got there. She was doing some work, or she intentionally put it there, but it was not for beauty. What would be the din? Well, since it's not for beauty, the Taz here explains that nonetheless you could be mekel. And same thing the Chochmas Sodom. Why?
You still love milsa.
Exactly. In other words, even though it's not for beauty purposes, still it's not substantial. Mechaber continues on to say, "D'chein mi shehu tzovea v'yodov tzivois," and a choitz is a person who paints and his hands have paint on them. It's not choitzes. Ramo v'chein mi shehu munasu liyas shochet u'katzav, one whose profession is to be a shochet or a katzav, a butcher. V'yodov tomid melochlochos, his hands are always dirty b'dam. Eno choitzes. Sheroi bnei umnos zu eno makpidim. As we've said earlier, the majority of people who are involved in this kind of a profession or in similar professions are not makbid. So we're back to not being makbid.
But here we've created a new category.
Yeah.
Before we talked about people in general or the individual. Now we have a middle ground of that profession.
Right.
It's the first time this professional issue has come up. We had men and women, we had people in general, we had the individual. This is the first time we've limited this kind of thing to a group within the greater society, within the greater population.
Yeah.
But the halacha.
The what?
Same.
I'm sorry.
This is the first time we have had this question of whether it's machpid in a small group within the general framework.
Right. As you were saying before. I mean, if this is what she does all the time, and she would get it on her, then the majority of these kind of people would not be machpid.
So this should apply to almost, would it apply to women with housework? So nothing's from the house? Or are they machpid on that?
Well,
But it depends on whether they are or not.
it all depends on what it is exactly. Here we're talking about, first of all, we're talking about paint and color. And as I was saying before, the Taz here mentions the example where she got on her body using his words, Shachruris b'mokom shenogo b'kois lebeis hamerchas shel yeshchoim machmas oshan. There was some smoke in that room where she was bathing, getting ready for the tefillah, and she got some of that dark marks on her body, or suit, or whatever.
Well, there is a question. When you said that the londel sehi,
Right.
it's not substantial. Color can be two different things. Color can be just a color, without
Right.
any substance accompanying.
That's exactly it. Yeah, there's no
But
substance.
color
to it.
can also be like the color that we have today that we paint on the wall, which is really thick and covers the wall well. That ends up being like a little piece of cloth almost or something. It is very substantial. That you can take it and actually peel it off.
Right.
It's not a discoloration.
Yeah.
It's actually a layer of color.
Yeah.
So the question is, when they're talking about color that's lavmiltzu, are they talking about a discoloration, or are they talking about an actual layer of color that you conceivably peel off?
Well, you cannot peel it off, but you can wash it off. But still, he says, just like with the hands, in the hands, he says, why don't we make her go back to the tefillah in the case of color on her body? Because on the hands, which are always exposed, and she's more makpedet that they should be clean, right? We say that if it's color, it has no substance, then the more so the rest of the body. I mean, she's not going to be so makpid on
If you
it.
look at people that, for instance, work with potatoes, peeling potatoes with their bare hands.
Right.
So eventually they'll have a discoloration that you can't wash it off.
That's a discoloration.
Yeah,
Dark, all right.
A dark color on their hands, on their fingers, that comes from constantly touching the potato peels.
Yeah.
And those that color is a color, but it's nothing that's substance. It's not something that you could wash over your
The
clothes.
Taz explains it. That's the difference between dio, I mean ink, and a regular color. With the ink does have mamashus, right? And that's why in Sif Tes Vav we said that if they're dry, they're choitzitzin. Why? Because obviously there's more to them than just plain coloration. Yeah.
So what we're talking about right now is really just plain color.
Just plain coloration, right? That's the example that I was talking about.
So it's not just
Yeah.
that the color doesn't have substance, but it's the kind of color.
It's the kind of color we're talking about. Right.
If it was paint that you put on the wall, that's actually a layer of paint which it has some substance to it.
Yeah.
So that would not fall under this category then.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So the Taz mashma is meikol, and same thing with the Chochma Sodom. Shevet HaLevi takes it one step further, based on what you were saying. That would fit into what the Shevet HaLevi is saying, that if, let's say she uses coloration for beauty purposes, and that coloration has substance, but if it's for beauty purposes, he says that maybe since she wants it, and it's for beauty purposes, she's not makbid. Obviously it's not choitzitz, even though it does have substance.
Right.
But it's for beauty, so that would be different.
So then you'd have the other argument to permit it.
To permit it, yeah. All right. So we basically saw in the Ramah that anyone who's involved on a regular basis, painter and the like, these individuals, this kind of professions, are not makpidim, and therefore they will not pose a problem for tevilah. Okay. Just briefly, Sif Yud Ches and Yud Tes and Chof talk about the nails. We're going to go through it very briefly because, as I said earlier, the nails is a whole chapter in itself. When it comes to dirt underneath the nails, it depends on whether it's underneath the portion of the nail that grows beyond the finger, beyond the Basar, or if it's keneged Basar, right by where the flesh is of the finger. So tsoya, the dirt, shetachas hatziporin, shelo keneged habasar. In other words, it's underneath the nail itself. It's choitzitz. Keneged habasar, if it's deeper in, eino choitzitz. It's not choitzitz. You can't see it. It's not a problem. The other one is, she wants to be clean. She wants to look clean. She doesn't want her husband to complain that she's not clean. So that part of the nail would be more of a problem. Botzek, however, if it's botzek shetachas hatziporin, if it's dough that is underneath the tziporin, afilu keneged habasar, even if it's keneged habasar, in other words, right by where the finger is, choitzitz, it's choitzitz. The ezel shelo keneged habasar. What's considered shelo keneged habasar? So he says, ze shatziporin oidef ala basar, that which is the nail goes beyond the basar, the finger itself. Now, Mechaber says, "Lefi ulefi she'enan yecholos lecha b'manika keneged habasar shelo keneged," and because we're not such great experts to be able to distinguish what is exactly keneged habasar and what's not, so nohagu hanoshim litot tziporneihem b'shas tefillah. It's an old minhag that the women cut their nails before they go to the tefillah. Okay? No, we will see later on what happens if she didn't cut. But in the meantime, we know that those nails have to be clean, especially if it's sheloi keneged habasar. What if it's just a little bit there? Davar mu'at, the person can bring down that it's not choitzes even in the nail, sheloi keneged habasar, because people are not makpid, women are not so makpid. If it's just a little bit, but if it's more than a little bit, then it's going to be a problem. Mechaber goes on in Sif Yutes and says, "Im yesh la nefach al makom hatziporen," but if she has some swelling where the nail grows, ve'ino yechola lo lachtot ve'lo lechat, she cannot cut the nail or to clean underneath it because of the swelling around it. Im nefucho kol kach, if it's so swollen, she'ena tit shetachat hatziporen nire, eino choitzitz. If it's so swollen that you cannot see any of the teeth of the dirt underneath the tziporen, it's not choitzitz. What does this remind you of? So the Shach says this is very similar. The Beis Yosef learned this from chetz, right? From the arrow, from the object, from the thorn inside, where if it's not visible, it's not visible. Now you see it, now you don't. It was there before, now it is. In other words, if it's not there, if you cannot see it, not visible, similar to the halacha before, that because of the swelling, if you cannot see it, then that wouldn't be a problem. Even if it's tachat hatziporen, it's underneath the nail, because of the swelling.
Is it swelling, or if you have somebody who is very obese,
right?
Their fingers, their body parts are going to be swollen up.
The what?
Their fingers on the body parts tend to be swollen.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we say that they fit this category?
Not really. It's not the same.
It seems to be a different kind of situation between sickness and, let's say, obesity.
Well, no, really, it's just a mitzias. In other words, the swelling around a certain part of the nail that it just doesn't allow her, for some reason, to get to easily to cut the nail or to clean it because of the nefichus there, because of the swelling around it. It just makes it difficult. So the bottom line is, if you can't see it, it's okay. It's not choitzitz. But as far as the nail itself, and there's a whole discussion about this, whether a grown nail that eventually is going to be cut, if it's a chatzitza or not. It's eventually going to be cut. It's going to be removed. Right? Meikar adin, we say that it's not choitzitz. Why? Because it's still part of her body. And as we will see, halacha l'maisa, there are some women that don't want to cut their nails. What if they don't want to? She's going into the mikveh. You can allow her to go into the mikveh, or does she? So we need to discuss that too. Because lechatchila, that's what's done. Mechaber says clearly, you cut your nails, you clean them, you cut your nails. And if you cut them, there's no problem about the cleanliness because whatever dirt may have been there is gone anyway.
Whatever could be removed.
Right, whatever could be removed.
Whatever could not be removed.
Yeah. Next halacha, dafka botzek shetachat hatziporen choitzitz. Dafka if it's botzek, if it's, as we said before, dough, which is underneath the tziporen is choitzitz. But a tziporen atzmo, as we began to say now, the nail itself ain't no choitzitz, is afilim moiso gedoyla, even if she's big, v'medes lichotech, and you're going to cut her off anyway. Uporachat ve'oberet mikeneged habasar, and she's way beyond the basar, the finger, flesh. It's not choitzitz. In other words, a piece of nail, even though it's extended, it's long, This piece of nail by itself does not, Meikar Din, is not a chatzitza. So that's the mechaber, very important halacha. The mechaber says a nail by itself, even though he said earlier that's the meaning is to cut him. He says, but Meikar Din, if it's clean, a long nail is not a chatzitza. Comes along the Ramah and makes sure that we understand what the mechaber just said and adds his own chumrah. What the mechaber just said, that a long nail is not a chatzitza, that is as long as there was nothing underneath it, not soyer or botzek, when she immersed. But, he adds, since the meaning is anyway to cut one's nails before you go into the mikveh, even if one nail was not cut, nisha v'yada, uncut, it remained uncut, the tovlo, sricha tvila cheres, she needs to go back inside, and that's the minute. So the Ramah is machmer, even if she went in already. So now the question is, what if she's already home? Does she go back? Or if it's only if she's there, what if she was with her husband? That we'll discuss another time. But the point here is that there's a big machlekes, in a sense, between the mechaber and the Ramah. Are we makpid on a nail that was not cut?
So then for an Ashkenazi who follows the Ramah, marrying a Sephardi would be something of a problem.
Well, she has to follow her husband's minhag and halachas.
Yeah, so he's not going to tell her that she can't follow her minhag.
No, but the mechaber said already, nohagur. The mechaber says, yeah, but the mechaber says nohagur anyway, little tzipor name. So the right thing to do is to do that. In other words, not to get into any sveikas, any questions. But as I said before, what happens if one insists on leaving her nails the way they are, or if she forgot, which could happen. Or, by the way, what do we mean when we say to cut the nails? How much do they need to be cut? What if it's just a drop? Or does it have to really be exactly flush with the root of the nail? So we're obviously not going to be machmer so much, especially if one customarily cuts what is customarily cut amongst all the women. In other words, one is not leaving more than what they have to. So if one did their job properly, whether they are not short enough or not, we're not going to be medayik so much, because what's the whole point of cutting the nails is to make sure that there's no dirt underneath. In this way,
I thought this question was whether the nail itself.
It's not so much a nail. As you can see, the mechaber said that's not the real problem here, and on that the Ramah said, I agree. As long as they're clean, that's not the ikar problem. Then why am I machmir? Because
But now that he's machmir,
yes,
it doesn't help you anymore.
It doesn't help you too much. Exactly. Yeah.
Because he's doing it for a different reason. Now he's no longer looking if there's still dirt there.
We're going to see why he's machmir. But this is definitely.
But now that he is machmir, regardless of why, now that he is machmir, that being machmir itself establishes now a new fact.
That's correct. Yes.
So that's less room for
that. Mitzvah Hashem, we'll discuss this more in depth next time.